Hey, Daddy, you want to see a secret spot?
Yeah, where is it?
It's over here. Follow me.
Hello. Are we here? Or are
We're
we
here.
there?
We're here.
Okay, so we're connected.
We're connected. And we're
So
live.
this everybody is hi, I'm David Sereda from davidsereda.co. This is kind of a follow-up to my show with Coast to Coast AM George Norrie the other night. And I've been on Coast to Coast AM since the Art Bell days, so over 23 years I've been on that show, and many others. So this subject is so vast. I kind of don't know where to start because I don't know how many people heard the show on Coast to Coast AM. But when you present a new idea, at first people are like, "Whoa, that's too far out," or "That's a new idea. We've never heard of it." Well, when you discover something new, that's usually in the beginning. I would have to say there's a lot of resistance to receive a new idea about the solar system, about where we go when we die. And it's not so new as far as where we go when we die, because we've had many explorers like Dante, the Italian poet, who had actual spiritual visions going through the 9 levels of hell, the 9 levels of purgatory, which is purification, purging, and the 9 levels of the heavens. He corresponded to the planets. The Earth to the Moon was the first heaven, and then then Venus, Mars. Earth, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Saturn being the 7th heaven. And beyond the 7th heaven, you go to the constellations. When a person graduates from the 7th level of heaven, they're ready to become cosmic beings who can then break the bond of the solar system and the soul and venture out into the stars. So that's all in Dante's actual experience. And beyond the stars are, when you get into Dante's experience, you'll see that when he gets to the eighth level of heaven is the constellations. The 9th level of heaven is something beyond this universe. But for me, of course, because my wife died in August 9th, 2021, which is the anniversary of the bombing of Nagasaki. Hiroshima was August 6th. Nagasaki was the 9th, which is the date window where Lahaina and Maui was burning. And I've done so much frequency tuning on my nervous system, and I actually had experiences with my wife before she died that were proof to me of out-of-body communication. In fact, one night when we were living in Sedona, I literally, with my eyes, woke up and I saw my wife, Crystal, as a spirit perfectly clearly, like not fuzzy, like not with one of these infrared cameras. She was floated back into her body. And the second her astral body hit her physical body, she rolled over in the bed. It was kind of like watching a wave hitting a log on the beach, and then the log rolls over as a consequence to the wave. And there were other times that she called out my name, and I could audibly hear it when she was alive and she was in the dreaming world. So what I'm going to share with you tonight is a follow-up to what happened on Coast to Coast AM. And just to postulate the abstract, this new experiential theory, right? You could say that Dante's experience, Swedenborg's experience of going through 3 levels of the heavens, you could say those are theoretical experiences. In fact, a lot of scholars think Dante made all this stuff up. He had real visions. And in fact, American poet John Ciardi, who translated the Divine Comedy, which consists of 4 books, the new life, La Vita Nuevo, the Inferno, which is the 9 levels of hell. And in Dante's experience, hell is not a permanent state. It's temporary, which is a very Buddhist kind of perspective. There's no eternal hell unless somebody wants to stay there forever. It's actually our own judgment that leads us into these places. And then following that, Dante documents the 9 levels of purgation, purification, purgatory. Purgatory sounds like a really bad word. I remember skiing this really steep, double black diamond run called Purgatory, as if you were going to go to hell, but actually it was a lot of fun. So Purgatory, in a way, is a great place because you're slowly purging, getting ready for the blinding light of heaven to meet you and take you up. And when Dante goes to the whole story is the most magnificent romantic spiritual story I've ever read in my life. But when he goes to the first level of heaven, he's greeted by the blinding light of Christ and his beloved, formerly deceased Beatrice. And she becomes his angelic guide all the way with Christ, all the way up to the 9th level of heaven, the highest level of heaven. And I had this experience in 1986, December 22nd and 23rd. And I never really understood at the time, because I was so young, I was about 25 years old back then, that why this experience happened on the 22nd and 23rd of December. But I was taken through the 7 levels of heaven 2 days in a row, starting at 4:15 in the afternoon. The most spectacular spiritual vision next to having visions, blinding visions of Christ in my life. But what I'm going to propose today is what happened to me is these experiences with my wife continued after she died. And this one experience, we were in Banff, Alberta in the spring, and the voice of my wife at about 9 o'clock, I was falling asleep in this big place. My daughters were in, my daughter Laura was with a friend in another room, and I was sleeping on this huge bed next to my little one, Astoria. And I hear Crystal's voice so loud. I mean, it's so loud and clear. I leaped out of the bed. I actually have video of it on my iPhone. And she calls out my name. And there's a knowing that there's a purpose to her calling out my name on this day. So I go get a calculator and I measure the number of days from August the 9th, 2021 to this date. I think it was May. And it was 591 days. And I'm going to show you something miraculous. So can I do share screen shows?
Yeah, click on present and share, and then I'll post it for you.
Okay, so I have to get my calculator up. You're not going to believe what this does. And I showed this to George Norrie the other night, and he was truly, honestly astonished. It's not easy to astonish George Norrie because he's heard everything, literally everything, every night of the week. For years and years and years, George has heard it all. And he's a big follower of the Fatima miracle. So let me go to present, share screen. I need to just share my calculator. Where is it?
You haven't shown up yet.
Do I just do share all? I don't know how this works.
You click on present. Did you click?
Oh, entire screen. Here we go. Share entire screen. Okay.
No, you're still not sharing.
No, I know. I haven't clicked on it yet.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm clicking on it, but nothing's happening, Charles.
Okay, just hang in there.
Window. Let's just say window. There we go. Calculator. There we go. Okay. So you see my calculator.
Yeah, you got it.
So it had been 591 days. 591 days since my wife died. 591. Now, there's 365 and a quarter days per year. So let's just divide 591 by 365.25. And guess what you get? The golden ratio is 1 to 1.618. Now, if that isn't astonishing enough, she's communicating with me and giving me a number that is 1 to the golden ratio days after she died. But it's way more mind-blowing than that. So on my calculator, take 591 and divide it by the long form, 1.6180339,887, right? And then this is the exact, in sidereal cosmic time, the real time of the universe, number of days it takes Earth to go around the sun once, precisely. And it's exact. It's 99.999999%. There is no such thing as 100%. And the other thing you have to understand about the golden ratio, and I did this, you can do this yourself. So measure the tip of your finger to your wrist. For me, that's 7 inches. And then measure your wrist to elbow and divide wrist to elbow by fingertip. And mine's 1 to 1.59, right? So before I go any further on this, I want to show you something. Like, see, Fibonacci's numbers are 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So I take 3 divided by 2, and it's 1 to 1.5, right? And then the next number, Fibonacci, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3,
5.
5 divided by 3 is 1 to 1.666. You see what I mean? And then we take the next one is 8 divided by 5, and it's 1 to 1.6. You see? And then you keep going.
13.
13 divided by 8 is 1 to 1.625, and then 21 divided by 13. And the Fibonacci's numbers give us a, see, now we're at 1 to 1.615, and eventually we'll get to 1 to 1.618033987. And just like pi, it just keeps going. So what that means is you have a lot of latitude for things in nature to be golden ratio. It was not previously known that the orbital period of the planets, the known planets, is golden ratio. It was previously known that Earth to Venus was golden ratio. But what I'm going to show you, and this only works with the number 591, you have to have this number. And this number, if I could find it, when my wife died, I had to get a new credit card. And guess what my security code was? It was 591. I didn't see it until after I made this discovery. And my daughter asked me to purchase something online, and it says enter your security code, and it was freaking 591. So 591 divided by 1.6180339,887. Watch what's going to happen. So there's Earth. That's the number exact. And then that's Venus. Venus, according to astronomers, is 225 Earth days. But what you tend to find with online research is the summary or rounding off of number to the nearest, right? That's better than 99% accuracy for Venus. And then I do it one more time and I get this number. This number does not line up with any planet we know of, but I'm going to prove to you tonight this lines up with the miracle of Fatima precisely and the ascension date of Jesus Christ. It also lines up, sure, as I was doing research late last night on, many people don't know about this, but the Mother Mary appeared in a luminous body of light in a district of Cairo, Egypt called Zaytun over a Coptic church, and she was seen by millions of people. She was photographed, and the apparitions started in April of that year. It was 60 something, and the date she leaves, she's in alignment with this number from the start of the new year. And that's astounding. This number lines up, and I'm going to show you how it works in a minute, but I'm going to divide it by the golden ratio again. That is Mercury. Accurate to guess what? So Mercury is 88 days. Of course, that's rounded off. Accurate to almost 98%. Now, you remember, your golden ratio does not have to be 100% because no two golden ratio sequences in nature, like my fingertip to wrist to elbow, is 1 to 1.59. That's well within what you call tolerance of the golden ratio. So the fact that I line up all the way to Mercury is astounding. But the same thing happens when I take 591 times the golden ratio, 1.618, 339,887, and I go to my outer planets. That's the dwarf planet Ceres. That's a hidden planet in the asteroid belt. That is Jupiter. And I'll go all the way to Uranus and Neptune, and my accuracy is way above the 92% mark. Now, I have a very precise paper on this for people who were good at math. But actually, what I'm going to do now is show you, how do I stop screen? I'm going to show you a graphic I made. Of course, I had this on George Norrie the other night. And you're going to see where Fatima fits in here really perfectly. So let me go to Zoom. Wait, we're not on Zoom. Sorry. I gotta, wait. Hang on a second. My Zoom is opening up. We are on StreamYard. So share screen, present.
Present, yeah.
Share screen, and I'm going to say window. And where are my windows for what I was just doing? Where's my graphic? There it is. Okay. So based on the calculation I just did, you're going to see what really caused the miracle of the sun at Fatima. And of course, today is the anniversary in human timekeeping. Tomorrow is the annular eclipse that will go. We're going to talk about the eclipse in a minute, but this eclipse to me is very auspicious because it lines up within a degree of accuracy better than 99% on the window in sidereal time for the Fatima miracle. It's been 106 years since Fatima. I believe when it's been 108 years since Fatima, we will hit a super miracle because 108 is a magic number. So what we did, we started with the number 591. And Mars is actually the only planet that is not sitting in the high 90% to my formula. And that is because Mars and what is called the asteroid belt, where Ceres, and actually there are known other dwarf planets in the asteroid belt that fit my formula, because there was a collision that occurred there that there's a lot of theories on what caused the asteroid belt. And I know a lot of the theories. In fact, one of them will involve an antimatter collision, which caused the total annihilation. You see, the golden ratio is such that have you ever seen videos, pictures? Actually, let me do this. Before I go into this, let me find a video of this so you can see this because we have time. It's called humpback whale bubble feeding. And here we go. Humpback whale bubble feeding. Here we go. So now we go to where I am with you. StreamYard. Can you see this?
No, you're going to have to stop this and go to the next window.
Okay, so it doesn't follow you. I see. So you go to present.
Right.
Share screen. Window. There you go. So I like the humpback whale bubble feeding because it forms a Fibonacci golden ratio spiral. And you see how each bubble is in a series, in a sequence? The way the golden ratio works, gravitationally, if I divide my 591 by the golden ratio and I find these missing spaces between the known planets, there has to be energy there, mass energy, that is keeping the chain together because gravitationally, all the planets are like these bubbles. They are all in sequence. And if I start plucking, just like the asteroid belt collision, and plucking them out, the chain will warp. Even though the sun gravitationally is the master of the solar system. The planets all tug on each other. So what I'm saying is these other planets that are invisible to us have to be there, or the golden ratio sequence should fall apart. And what's amazing is it doesn't.
Oh,
You see, it doesn't fall apart. It's just like a chain link. If I were to take a piece of chain, and I did this the other day, but my daughter took the chain away from me, and I take the chain on the table and I do this, they're all connected. Now, if I remove pieces of chain, they can't tug on each other anymore in a gravitational relationship. So what that means is, going back to the graphic, going back to my graphic, these missing planets have to be there. And in fact, Newton said, one of the early fathers of physics, that every action has to have an equal and opposite reaction. Well,
then isn't there space between these missing planets too?
no, every one of these dots is in golden ratio sequence to 591. So 591 is like the center of the teeter-totter. It's the fulcrum to the solar system. And I believe it was Mars's original position. But Mars, with the huge gash on it and the war of the gods in the asteroid belt, which destroyed, you see, the distance between Mars and the 591 in Jupiter is too big. It's too big. The chain is broken for too great of a distance there. There has to be something there gravitationally holding this chain together, because these are all in golden ratio sequence, which is impossible mathematically if you understand the inverse gravitational square law and the inverse square law to light and electromagnetism, which I do. You understand how this works. So I'm going to show you this in a second with my book. But what I'm saying is this date, 139.51, like, for example, last year, this past, okay, so what is the ascension date of Jesus? It's after Jesus resurrects, which is 3 days. So he goes under for 3 days. Now, notice that our planet Earth, at the end of the winter solstice, December 22nd, 23rd. That's the date we mark it, but it actually wobbles a bit on either side every year because of sidereal time versus, human-made time. Is depending on where you start your solar year. You could start it at Christmas Day, which is really the new sun, even though that's different every year just by a tad. And my 139.51 day has to have a bit of tolerance. But last year in the Orthodox Church, Jesus' Ascension Day was 139 days into the year. Right? But that date will wobble a little bit every year, and then it'll come back to 139. So with tolerance, I'm there. That's his Ascension Day, and that lines up with a single orbit of planet 139.51 in the golden ratio sequence between Venus and Mercury. So I divide the golden ratio again at Mercury, 1, 2, 3 more times, and guess what? I come to planet Vulcan. And planet Vulcan is what you call a theoretical planet that early French astronomers in the 18th century, they saw it on their telescopes. They knew it wasn't a sunspot because they know the period of sunspots, and then it would vanish. And then years later, astronomers in Colorado, early 1900s, saw it again. Gone. Of course, everybody knows Spock is from Vulcan in Star Trek. And the Romans and the Greeks had a god for this planet named Vulcan, or Hephaestus. I think for the Greeks it was Hephaestus, that was the god of the forging of metals and melting metals. Do you know that on planet Mercury today, here, you can't melt metal? But where Vulcan theoretically is, you can melt metal. It's really interesting. So how did they know, right? This planet would elude us would be written off as some gravitational anomaly because they can't see it, but then they can see it, but then they can't see it, right? So we're getting close to the answer of what caused the miracle of the sun at Fatima, right? So why is it, okay? So the Mother Mary appears to the three children in 1917 on May the 13th. Now, May the 13th in 1917, this is in my paper. Anybody who wants to read the full paper, it's on my website. Charles, can you put that in the chat, the link to that paper?
I will.
And it's 20 pages. It'll be the most important 20 pages you read in your life, I think, because it explains where we go next. Where to next is going to be my next documentary film. So the fact that the first day that Mary appears to the children is within the window of 139 days into the year. She appears on the 13th of month for 5 months, and on October the 13th, 1917, the miracle of the sun happens. And guess what? The miracle of the sun, October 13th, is 2 rotations of planet 139. 2. You know what the odds of that are? That her first day is 1 and the second day is 2? Because the relationship between Earth and planet 139 is a miraculous number. It's a miraculous number. Watch. So I'm going to get my calculator out first and do this myself before I show you. 365.25. Of course, I'm only doing this 2 decimals of accuracy. Divided by 139. 0.51 is 2.618. It's 1 to 2.618. Now, remember, the golden ratio is 1 to 1.618. But guess what 2.618 is? That's the golden ratio squared. It's 1 to the golden ratio squared. Remember, my wife calls out my name 1 to the golden ratio days since she died. Or you could express that in years, because ratio would be the same in years, 1 to 1.618 years later. And now the relationship to the planet, we'll call it the ascension planet of Jesus, or we'll call it heaven, or we'll say that the Bible says that God created the heavens and the earth, and that I'll postulate that the heavens are all of these invisible planets, and the visible ones are where we are. And they're 2 sides of a coin. And guess what? Quantum physicists discovered this to be true. And this, in the early days of, this is an incredible book called The Particle Odyssey by Frank Close, Michael Martin, and Christine Sutton. And it's really worth reading, because you really learn about all these subatomic particles and what they are. And when they discovered antimatter, let me show you a picture of a real piece of antimatter. So that's an electron and a positive electron, which is antimatter, right? Electron, positron. Now, a positive electron, all of our atoms have electrons that spin. You're looking from the top down, it's called spin. They spin negative, counterclockwise. So that means that every piece of matter has antimatter. That means the proton has an antiproton, a muon has an antimuon, a tau has an anti-tau. I mean, I know all these particles pretty intimately because I've studied them, and I worked for legendary nuclear particle physicist Bogdan Maglich, and worked with him and for years. You see these charts here, even the quarks, right? These are all your charts. It's kind of blurry.
It's blurry, yeah.
All your particles include, so your proton and your neutron are made up of quarks, and you have up quarks, down quarks. You have strange, anti-strange quark. I have anti-strange eyebrows right now. So you have to see this, because what they did, and Paul Dirac, very famous physicist, one of the early discoverers of antimatter, they said this: if we can create anti-hydrogen, remember your body's made up of 87% water, depending on how much water you drink. I'll have a glass of water, so I'll go up to 90%. 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. They created an anti-hydrogen atom and a molecule, which is bigger than an atom. And they realized if they can create an antimatter hydrogen atom, there must be antimatter people. You can't see them. Anti-planets, anti-solar systems, and even anti-galaxies. Anti-galaxies, which would theoretically be where black holes take us to. So there's a piece of scripture that actually explains this.
Wow.
It's called, and it was, of course, banned by the popes. Of course, they banned this. The Secret Book of John, or the Apocryphon of John. And if you read the Apocryphon of John, you will see where it says in here, the story of the physical, and this is Jesus speaking. Okay, so how can anybody argue with this? It's not a conspiracy theory. This is Jesus Christ speaking. And this is a record to the Apostle John after he resurrected during the 40-day window. So after the 3 days that Jesus went under, I should go back to that point for a second. After the 30, I'll put this, you really want to read this. I'll put this in the chat for people who really want to learn this. I've read this document over and over and over again so many times. And this document was discovered in Nag Hammadi, Egypt in 1947. Very, very iconic year. And it's when we invented the transistor, and it's also the Roswell incident. And many other UFO incidents occurred that year. So in the Apocryphon of John, Jesus says that we physically were created by a team of male and female demigods physically. And we were made to kind of be, in a way, inferior subjects to them. And the king of the demigods, who thought he was the big god, saw that when we were created, the supreme God, unbeknownst to this arrogant God, planted a luminous seed in every one of us. This is all in the Apocryphon of John. And this luminous seed allowed us to surpass in enlightenment and intelligence those who created us. This is not in the book of Genesis. This is in the Apocryphon of John. And notice that Jesus, having incarnated in a male body and then gaining his resurrection body, he now has this new knowledge to give his apostle John. Is what Jesus is saying is very confirming of what the ancient Sumerian tablets, translated by Zechariah Sitchin, had to say, is that we were physically fashioned by gods and goddesses in a team to be workers, to worship these demigods as if they were the big god. Now you notice if you read John in the canonized Bible, chapter 8, Jesus is getting in a big fight with a group of young Jews, and he's telling them the God you're worshiping is a murderer and a liar. This is in the canonized Bible in John. And what he's really saying is fulfilled in the Apocryphon of John, that this egotistical God, who's an angry God, and Jesus' God is not an angry God, Jesus is saying in the Apocryphon of John that basically we were ripped off, but the supreme God put a luminous seed in every one of us, and because the king of the demigods, he goes by many names. Yaldabaoth is one of the names. He has many different names. Sakwa. I think he's one in the same as Zeus. I mean, when you transliterate, or Indra in the Indian system, who are very powerful leader, egotistical type gods. What happens? It's really incredible. Because we can get enlightened and surpass them, the king of the demigods says they threw him and cast him, meaning man and woman, into the lowest region of matter. not a lowest geographical region of the universe, the lowest region of matter itself, which I think is all we had to do is spin our electrons and our protons and all the constituent particles, the magnetic field of the human being, the other way, and we would go down. So we would be on the other side of the coin. And when they discovered antimatter, the antimatter only shows up, to take a picture of it, which I just showed you, and we have thousands of pictures of antimatter in cloud chambers. It only shows up at high energies, therefore high frequencies. Gamma frequencies generate antimatter. And there's antimatter on the Earth all the time. Just a tiny, tiny bit. And guess where it is? Lightning strikes. And when we detonate nuclear weapons, we create a tiny bit of antimatter. And that antimatter only exists for less than a billionth of a second. And then ordinary matter meets it. There's a bright flash of light when this happens. When this transfer of matter to antimatter, and then it converts itself back into high frequency gamma light, which is invisible to us. But that gamma light can activate visible light for us to see. So, for example, we can actually see the effects of a gamma burst from a distant, star or galaxy in astronomy. We can actually see it as a flash, even though the gamma portion of it we don't see. It will activate other light. So we're getting close to the miracle of the sun at Fatima, because I'm kind of building us towards this moment. So we know from Jesus, and this scripture has only been available to us since 1947. It was translated at major universities, Princeton, Claremont in California. Elaine Pagels, who was a professor of religion at Princeton, is one of the major translators on it. I attended many of her lectures in person at USC, University of Southern California, read all the books. So we know this is Jesus speaking to John. So when you really understand this, the lowest region of matter is not a geographical, being banished from the Garden of Eden is not a geographical thing. It's an energy thing. And when you see why it is that no matter where we look with our telescopes, we can't see life on any other planet. But the mathematical formula that my wife gives me from the other side shows, guess what? If a planet is an antimatter planet, you won't see it. And guess what just happened just recently? This happened in the last few months. It was published in Nature magazine that scientists wanted to know if antimatter would be affected by the gravity of the sun and the earth. And they did a really serious study on this. And I initially thought it's not going to react with gravity, but I was wrong.
David, there's a few comments and
no, I'll get to those. Just hang on, because
okay.
I see them coming in, and I just want to hold my focus till I get this point. And then when you come back to my diagram and you see this and understand this number 591, which for those people who follow Richard Hoagland's work, and I'm on Richard Hoagland's shows periodically quite a bit in the past few years, he discovered the 19.5, which in the mirror is 591, by the way. It was just with one added decimal. So understanding this number comes from the other side, and it leads to this particular planet that lines up perfectly with a degree of accuracy of better than 95%. Remember, every year the ascension date of Jesus will oscillate because it's sidereal time. Just like Easter oscillates every year, because Easter is a product of cosmic timekeeping, not human timekeeping. And the fact that this lines up with the two dates on Fatima, the first date that the Virgin Mary appears and the final miracle of the sun is exactly 2 orbits of planet 139, is utterly astounding. Utterly astounding. So if I then state that what happened at Fatima is this graphic, hang on a second. And then we'll go to some questions here in a second. We'll go to what happened at Fatima on the miracle of the sun is that planet 139 just like planet Vulcan would have had enough. See, it's if we're matter with a tiny bit of antimatter that is generated by constant lightning strikes, which means we always have a little bit of antimatter on the planet, then they have a little bit of matter on their planet, but their main planet is antimatter to us. And if that equilibrium is upset just enough, there could be an enormous flash, because we know that when antimatter is generated from gammas, there's an enormous flash. And there's another enormous flash when the antimatter meets matter and annihilates. So just like planet Vulcan eluded astronomers closer to the sun than Mercury, I'm saying the ascension planet of Jesus and the miracle of the sun at Fatima was such an event that can be explained by mechanical quantum physics and physics, and that it eluded us, and that this is the true Star of Bethlehem that did the same thing, because it came into our dimension just for a period of time and then went back out. Because Jesus declares himself in Revelation the bright and morning star, which we attribute to Venus. But this planet is between Venus and Mercury. It's very close. And using my mathematics, I decoded the frequency, just like Earth has a frequency and Mercury has a frequency. I decoded the frequency of planet 139, and I transmitted it into my house. And I fell asleep that afternoon last summer I made a balcony bed on my second story balcony. And as I'm falling asleep and the sun's up above me, I hear this loud male voice call out my name. And it said something in an ancient language. It might have been Aramaic or Hebrew. Because I don't know those languages very well. I only know the odd word in those languages. And I woke up and I got my phone and I went to my Star Walk 2. I go to Star Walk 2. And then I go to my compass and I click on your compass, and wherever you move it, it tells you, because I knew where the voice was coming from. And the voice came between Venus and Mercury. Right? If somebody calls out your name in the house, you don't go downstairs if you heard it upstairs. And I was so blown away, because all it took was for me to transmit that frequency, and I would become aligned to it. And it's like hide and go seek. You found us, David. It's the feeling I got. And I was just astounded that this planet and the heavenly planets and the ascension of Jesus and the miracle of the sun at Fatima, and even the miracle of the Mother Mary appearing in Zaytun in Cairo, the day she ends the operations, is in alignment with planet 139. I mean, the coincidences are piling up like crazy, right? It's kind of like being a blind person down here. And when somebody, when my wife died, I wanted to know, where are you? I'm calling out to her in the universe. And again, we get an answer. So I've had multiple PhDs read this document. Did you put up the link, Sharose, to the document?
I did multiple times. I'll put it up again.
Yeah, I don't see it in there for some reason.
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, okay, there it is. Yeah, you go to my research page, and then you click on that, and you read the 20 pages, and you'll see. I mean, especially the people who reading it who have degrees in understanding astronomy and mathematics. I wouldn't say the math in it is anything that anybody who knows a little bit about math couldn't understand. I mean, understanding the number of Earth, we use Earth days to count the number of days it takes for each planet to go around the sun. You couldn't really understand this. So the last thing I'm going to show before I can take some questions is the path of the eclipse tomorrow. We can see that it's going to, I think this is somewhere around 8:30 in the morning Pacific time. You should get ready, because as the eye of the ring of fire. It's going to go right through New Mexico, northern Nevada, Oregon, possibly that's Northern California. And it's going to go right through the Chichen Itza pyramid in Mexico. And it's going to go through the pyramids in Guatemala. And it's going to go through Ecuador, coming all the way off the western side of South America in this upper tip here. The entire gray area is the cone. So I'm up here just north of northern Idaho on the Canadian side. So we're at about 70% according to the cone. So you can see where you are and try get a time of when it will be passing through. But the other thing is that our sun just lost its north and south magnetic poles. So if you go to space weather this past week, we pretty much, the North Pole is just barely hanging on. It's probably already gone by now. So we have no, in a way, the sun is like a monopole magnet. It has no polarity. And we're having an eclipse. And it's the anniversary of Fatima. I'd say that's pretty special. A very good time to meditate and do prayers. So with that, any questions, anybody? So yes,
which ones?
there are Pineapple Love wrote, so there are antimatter versions of us. Yes, all the electrons in your body. If you were to raise the frequency of your body, you would meet your antimatter self, and then you would annihilate in a flash of light. Now, when Jesus's body was laying there, notice it was 3 days before he resurrected. Guess what 3 days is? 4,320 minutes, 4:32. And those 3 days, that the earth will hang out 3 days at the end of the ellipse on both the winter and the summer solstice, right? So that's where you mark your counting for each planet for its orbital period would be around December 25th to January the 7th or 6th when the Orthodox celebrate Christmas. Actually, the earliest Christians on record celebrated Christmas January 6th or 7th, and again with sidereal time that changes every year.
Somebody's asking if you have to be Christian.
Well, only God knows the answer to that. What I do know is we can't judge. We're incapable of judging. You know, Jesus said, "Many people call my name, but they're far away from me." So many people shout his name on the rooftop, but he's saying they're far away from me. And there's only one account in the entire New Testament where it's interpreted that you have to be a Christian. I've seen Jesus shining with the sun in front of me. I've met many of the greatest masters of meditation on the earth. I've never met anyone that compares to him at all. I would say it's a very easy choice, but that choice should come from love and not fear. It should come from just understanding that he was the supreme being on earth. But that you can't see, if I was in a court of law and all the apostles presented to me, and I'm adding the Gnostic Gospels on top of that, which includes the women testimony, and the post-resurrection, the period of the resurrection. See, one of the things about the Gnostic Gospels is we have a lot of accounts of the teachings of Jesus after he resurrected in his new body. And the church deleted them all, right? I mean, you can't do that. You can't have 2/3 of your testimony and your apostles removed from the courtroom. That's what the early church fathers did. So when you read it all, there's nowhere in the Gnostic scriptures that says you have to be a Christian. Nope. There's only one account in the canonized Bible that says that only those who believe in me are saved, but that's translated into English. When you read, again, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are Greek. They're originally in Greek. Jesus didn't speak Greek. He spoke Aramaic, which is early Hebrew. So I can't say I'm not God. Only God knows the answer to the question. But I would say that there's not a lot of proof of that statement at all, because you don't have confirmation. So if I have 12 apostles, male, 7 close women, 72 disciples. Jesus had 72 disciples, 12 male apostles and 7 female apostles. 72 disciples. Now, we don't have confirmation of that statement more than 1 or 2 in literature. It's not very, very powerful as far as why didn't Philip say it? Why didn't Thomas say it? Why? There's nothing in the Gospel of Thomas. There's nothing in the Gospel of Philip. I think Jesus says he came to fulfill the law of the prophets. So he's saying that all the prophets are prophets of God. So every one of them is like, what would you say? The followers of Moses aren't Christians, so they're not saved. The followers of Abraham, who are followers of God under Abraham's jurisdiction, are not saved because they're not Christian. So the question is very difficult. I'm not capable of answering it because we don't have the ability to judge. All I know is if you really have the love of God in you, it really makes sense that love is what matters the most. When you hear tongue or another language, ask the Holy Spirit for the gift of interpretation of the tongue, and it will be given. And well, again, I pray to Jesus every single day, and Jesus and God are one to me. But God to me is infinite. It's not a person. When Moses met God on the mountain, there's no person. There's a voice, but the interpretation of the Tetragrammaton is I am that I am. I am infinite God. There is no body and hands and eyes. So later, Jesus, if you read chapter 8, read the whole chapter 8, you'll see he's guiding a group of Jews who are mistaken and worshiping a warfaring, angry God. And Jesus is calling that God a murderer and a liar God. He's a deceiver. And the same thing happens with the prophet Elijah and the duel with Jezebel. And there's a whole duel with the prophet Elijah. Many people were worshiping a deceiver God. So there's a deceiver God on the scene all the time, right? So we know that.
1917 was not a hologram, ?
Well, ultimately, it's all a hologram. We live in time. Nothing we see is instant. You're seeing the sun 8 minutes and 21 seconds ago. You're seeing the moon a quarter of a second ago. You're seeing a leaf fall on a tree a billionth of a second ago. Everything is in time. We don't see the real universe. So the question is, with the discovery of antimatter, and I'm not the first one to say there are anti-planets. This isn't my theory. I'm saying that if you do the math, starting at the number 591, all the planets are in alignment to the golden ratio to 591, except Mars is sitting around 87%. And that's doable in the golden ratio, but that's off by quite a bit. But then the mathematical formula says there's all these other planets. And it turns out there's 9 antimatter planets and there's 9 visible planets. Newton said every action has an equal and opposite reaction. A planet is a particle in a wave, which is an action. So it has to have an equal and opposite reaction. So that's what antimatter proved, right? Antimatter proved that every matter has an antimatter. So, I mean, this again, this is a new idea. When you present something new, the heavens, like I know a woman, and I said this on George Noory the other night, Erica McKenzie, has explained to me her near-death experience. She was a registered nurse, and she left her body. She's a believer in God and Christ. And God she's looking at the Earth, which would be about as big as the planet Venus is for us. And behind her is the sun, which means she's somewhere between the Earth and the sun. And she sees where God's speaking from this planet. And she can't tell me what the planet is, but it looks really similar to what the math and what the vision of my wife is in God is showing us.
So David, are you saying then the Newton's law as well as your thesis on differentials are valid?
Well, yeah, I'm saying differentials says, and there are 2 big debates in physics, whether you have symmetry or asymmetry. It's a huge fight, right? I would say Some agree with asymmetry, which is differential says there's always a little bit of leftover. So if I push this way, an equal and opposite reaction pushes against me, which is inertia. They're not equal and opposite. There's a little bit left over that keeps going. And that little bit of leftover between every action and reaction is a fractaling, right? And we see evidence of fractaling. And if everything was an equal and opposite reaction, the universe would be dead. It wouldn't be moving because you would have an equal and opposite reaction to everything. So there is a reaction to everything, but I don't believe they're equal and opposite. I believe there is a tiny, and in some cases not so tiny, differential mathematically. Yeah. So 3, 6, and 9, Mike says the 3, 6, and 9 is actually the ratio of those 30 and 60 and 90 degrees exist in the Ark of the Covenant's angles. If you measure the Ark of the Covenant is 1 to 1.66666666. So that's Fibonacci, right? So because the Ark of the Covenant is 1.5 by 2.5 cubits. So if I take 2.5 cubits, and it doesn't matter if you convert your cubits, your ratio stays the same. It just stays the same. It's 1 to 1.666666. And that's a Fibonacci 3.5, right? But then if I do my angles in that rectangle, it's 30, 60, and 90 degrees, 3, 6, and 9, right? So if Tesla said that 3, 6, and 9 are the secret of the universe, it's in the Ark of the Covenant. And by the way, I'm coming out with a new Ark of the Covenant coil. It's really going to be spectacular. I use laser accuracy templates, and the circumference will be equal to the height and breadth of the Ark of the Covenant. Plus, I'm converting it into a circle with. Shekina says, "Can you speak to the Divine Sophia Mother?" Well, the Sophia of Christ, one of the greatest, Gnostic manuscripts. One of the most amazing things about the Gnostic Gospels is they confirm the feminine relationship. They confirm that Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute. She was absolutely the wife of Christ, and that they had children when they were younger. I know some people are just not ready to believe that. I believe it. I've seen all of the evidence. But the Sophia is not necessarily Mary Magdalene in the flesh. The Sophia is an aspect. In Greek, it means wisdom. But if you read the Sophia of Christ, if you read the Gospel of Philip, I mean, how could the church remove the entirety of Philip's testimony? Read the Gospel of Philip. It is one of the most miraculous things, and I've spoken about it here before. And the antimatter matter is really a complementarity of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. In that the feminine is hidden, isn't it? Because they bury it. The early church father buried Shekinah. They did. I mean, you know what's funny, Shekinah, is I went to a book signing of Leonard Nimoy Spock in Brentwood, California, and I had already met him on the set of Star Trek IV with my good friend Michael Mann, and he had this book called Shekinah, and it was all about the story of the feminine spirit of God lived inside of the Holy of Holies, inside of the temple as a light, and that you would go in there and you would, of course, only the high priest, supposedly male priest, could enter the most holy place to see the Shekinah, but the Shekinah was feminine. But yet we know from the remains of Mary Magdalene's temple in the village of Migdal that she had her own Holy of Holies, her very own. Because if you look at the measurements in the Smithsonian, you'll see they're correct measurements for a Holy of Holies temple. But yeah, that's what happened. All the Gnostic literature confirms the feminine aspect of Christ's teachings, all deleted by egotistical male leaders who said that they had providence and that they were going to delete 2/3 of all the apostles' testimony because they confirmed the divine feminine. And the Shekinah and the Sophia are really the same thing. But there's not only the Sophia of Christ. There are 3 other manuscripts in the collection of the Nag Hammadi that confirm the mystery of Sophia. Also, the Gospel of the Great Invisible Spirit, which is the otherwise known as they call it the Gospel of the Egyptians, but its true name is the Gospel of the Great Invisible Spirit. By calling it the Gospel of the Egyptians, people think it's an ancient Egyptian manuscript. It is a early Christian teaching of the practice of the vowel toning and the perfection of chanting word to activate the awakening of what Jesus called the chrism, being superior to the baptism, and the chrism is the light body. The chrism later became an anointing of olive oil in the Catholic Church, which is part of baptism rites and rituals in the Orthodox and the Catholic Church. Even though there was a way to vibrate and prepare olive oil for an activation to hold the vibrations in the olive oil, there was a mixture of olive oil and other ingredients that they could store the vibrations in to activate a person's light body using a combination of frequency and ingredients and oil. So
is this the same gamma radiation that allegedly is getting stronger as CME solar flares are getting stronger in recent years?
well, gamma rays instantly give birth to antimatter. And there's a website, I can show it to you here. Let me just pull it up. Hang on. Where we look at, it's called the Worldwide Lightning Network. But let me just get another website up, which is because Charles, we just did this in our inner circle. We have an inner circle class that I teach every Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. Pacific. For anybody who wants to join that, you just talk to Sharoz. We have 3 years archived. So it would take a person a long time to go through all those lessons. But we go to what's called dark lightning. So if you Google dark lightning, and this page on Wikipedia is really good. Terrestrial gamma ray flash. So here, let me show you this. We go to, because then I have to go make my kids dinner.
What's the website called?
I'll show it to you in a second. Here, I just got to go to present. Share screen, window. Terrestrial gamma ray flash. So the terrestrial gamma ray flash is on this page in Wikipedia. You can see that these lightning strikes, not all lightning strikes do this. It says this right in the top. Terrestrial gamma ray flashes have been recorded to last 0.2 to 3.5 milliseconds, which is a thousandth of a second. Up to 20 million electron volts, very powerful. It is speculated that TGFs are caused by intense electric fields produced above or inside thunderstorms. Scientists have detected energetic positrons and electrons produced by TGF flashes. So positrons means antimatter. So that would mean that maybe one of the functions of God in the Bible, we did this in our last inner circle, of all the incidences of like lightning on the Mount Sinai, the lightning bolt that struck and broke the temple open when Jesus was crucified, there would be upwards of 20 million electron volt energies of gammas to give birth to antimatter. And the antimatter could even explain the sudden disappearance of people. In fact, there's more antimatter in these dark lightning strikes than there is in even the detonation of the smaller atomic bombs like those used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So now there are mild gammas coming off of uranium deposits all the time, but they're not at that intensity. So lightning strikes are supernatural. They really are. And in fact, if we go to here, what I have is a website. Let me put that in the chat. The TG. Let me put that in the chat so you can read about TGF. So when you really study the lightning strikes in the Bible and around Jesus, and also the sudden flash of light that burned Jesus's image into the shroud of Turin, his physical body annihilated and gave birth to his new body, could have been his antimatter body, because antimatter will annihilate matter. There was no remains of Jesus's body, nothing but the shroud with the image of him burned into the linen fibers. which gamma radiation would burn his image in very, very hot. Gammas are hotter than ultraviolet light by millions of times. So yes, in an instant, it could photo flash. In fact, I've read physics studies on the Shroud of Turin that prove there must have been intense radiation present to cause the burns in the linen fiber to produce the image of Christ. So the last thing here is the worldwide lightning strike. I became very interested in this because of the presence of antimatter and lightning strikes and lightning strikes in the Bible. Where is it? Here it is. WWLLN. So they're monitoring all the time where the lightning strikes are occurring and where, of course, I think they know this, these antimatter. See, the lightning is happening all the time, 24/7 on the planet. It's what drives the Tesla-Schumann resonance. I believe the real frequency of Earth is more subtle than the Tesla-Schumann resonance, but the Tesla-Schumann resonance is, you see, this is where, what is this? 2023, 1013. So this was today, right? October 13th. And you can see the intensity. Looks like there are a lot of strikes off the coast of Florida in the Bermuda Triangle right here. Interesting. We got a lot of lightning right in the path of where the eclipse is going to go tomorrow. We got a lot of lightning today at pretty high intensities at Chichen Itza, the Yucatan area, and a lot in Ecuador, in this region of the northern part of South America. Okay, this is today, yep, 13th of October, 2023. So this is daily. So you can see this. I believe there's a purpose to God using lightning in the Bible because it opens a portal, and it'll open that portal in a billionth of a second. A person could physically vanish through that, physically, instantaneously. And we have accounts of that. People just instantly vanishing and nobody knows where they went. Just like that. So yeah, where there, Mike says where there's forward voltage and there's reverse voltage, right? And people who use my coils with frequencies, you can switch. You can just get a little switch and you can switch the clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise. Or my new systems, the cubes spin counterclockwise and clockwise at the same time. So you have both you have both in kind of an equilibrium. All right. Yeah. So for people, I don't do these lives on Facebook. I was doing them for quite a while. I have a lot of the Gnostic ones going through each Gnostic manuscript in detail are still on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, but and you can join the Lightstream Body Activation. It's only $11.11 a year, $11.11 a year, and you can have access to all those lives.
All those, yeah. Okay, thanks everybody for being here. Have a great solar eclipse tomorrow. I'm praying for a miracle for Israel and the Palestine, that they come to peace.
Yes.
And it breaks my heart to see children in the middle of this. They should be absolutely removed with their families. War is not, there's just nothing positive you can say about it. So really praying for peace tomorrow for Israel and the Palestine. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, David. Bye, everyone. If you have any questions, you can message me. You can text me 778-386-1786 or call that number as well. Or just go on the website and send a message through there, and I'd be happy to help you with anything you need. Bye, everyone.